All right, here we are. Catastrophic reactions. Oh boy, what a topic. I'm sure we've seen them and we may have actually experienced them ourselves from time to time. So let's get into talking about this very important topic. Let's start with the definition. So what is a catastrophic reaction? It's an overreaction to a seemingly normal situation. Now, when it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's, we tend to see this more in moderate stage. And we're going to kick this off with a little story about my mother and us traveling together and her having a catastrophic reaction, a big one, over a little thing, which is very common. So we were coming back from Australia. I've mentioned this before that we took this trip. We were unable to make our original flight. It was canceled. So we took another flight which caused us to miss our connection in Los Angeles back home to Detroit. So we had to spend the night in Los Angeles. So let's set up this scenario. We've just traveled 16 hours. We're in an entirely different time zone. We're in yet another new city, and we're in another new hotel after just traveling for 3 weeks in Australia. And I'm with a moderate stage Alzheimer's person. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Thank goodness the hotel bar had strong martinis. I'm just kidding. No, not. Well, maybe. Anyway, what she did is she went off the rails about her hairbrush. So she accused me of stealing her hairbrush from her, verbally attacked me about it, told me what a horrible daughter I was, and why would I do such a thing? She tried to escape from the hotel room. She was frantic about this hairbrush thing because she couldn't brush her hair before dinner. And the reality is the hairbrush was right on the counter in the bathroom the whole time. But she thought I had stolen it from her. And this went on for about 10 minutes, her rage. Now, I want you to keep this story in mind because when we get to the end of this lesson, we'll talk about actually how I handled that situation. And we'll address some of these things in this lesson is when we go through some of the causes and things like that. So, that being said,
so the typical behaviors that you might see during a catastrophic reaction are lashing out verbally, striking out physically, crying, and trying to escape. So if you look at these things, they're all kind of part of that fight or flight response that we've talked about. Your loved one is feeling like they're in danger, and they're trying to resolve that danger or anger in the only way that they know how. And there are many causes that can lead up to catastrophic reactions. Loss of control. This is a big one. As somebody moves through their dementia journey, they lose control of little bits of their life at a time. You might start off at driving, and then it's, arranging what they can do throughout the day, social groups that they might have been a part of,
right.
Other hobbies that they may have enjoyed. They lose control of those, and a lot of times it ends up being a loved one is kind of making all the decisions for them. It's also very easy for them to misinterpret a situation, whether it's a hairbrush,
right,
or whether it's somebody coming in and trying to take your pants off. You can imagine that invasion of personal space. It would be really easy to misinterpret that as somebody being malicious, especially if there's been trauma in that person's life. We've talked a lot about expressions of unmet needs. Your loved one might be in pain, and they might be hungry, thirsty, hot, cold, any of those things, and they can't necessarily verbalize it. Mm-hmm. So they may lash out because they don't understand the cause or the solution to what they're experiencing. Changes in routine. This is, Kim's example is, I couldn't fit more changes in routine into an example if I had to.
Right.
That's totally going to throw a wrench
recipe
in
for
system.
disaster.
But even something as simple as daylight savings time, that can throw people for a loop. Changes in visitors around the holidays, and what you're doing, that can really lead up to these situations. Exhaustion, just like Kim's mom. End of the day, you're tired. I think we all get a little bit cranky and on edge when we're exhausted. But you throw dementia on top of it, and it's a pretty volatile cocktail.
Right.
And overstimulation. I mentioned the holidays. When you have a lot of family members coming in, people talking over each other, maybe there's a football game on, all those things can be really overwhelming for somebody with dementia to process. or even just having a hard time understanding their limitations. We see this a lot with people that maybe can't walk safely anymore, and they get very angry when people either try to help them or try to encourage them to not stand up. We are looking out for their safety, but they have a hard time understanding that.
So sometimes these catastrophic reactions can be caused by us, or better said, escalated by us. So how we approach the situation and approach our loved one is going to impact the outcome of this catastrophic reaction, right? So as I said earlier, or maybe I didn't and I meant to, our loved ones are going to actually mirror what we do, right? We've mentioned that in other lessons. So how we interact, how we react, what we bring to the table emotionally and what they see physically is how they're going to necessarily react and how they're going to try and mirror that. So if we come in, they're going to be, too. If we come in calm and like try to salvage this whole thing and calm them down and just be understanding and reassuring, chances are we're going to have a lot better outcome, right? So approach, reactions, and body language, 3 big things when it comes to handling and reacting to catastrophic.
Body language. We talked about this in nonverbal communication, but your posturing can really make a difference too in this. When Kim's mom was going for the door, if she jumped in front of the door and tried to push her back, that would have been an escalation of the situation.
Right.
So with catastrophic reactions, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes, get this into your brain. Say it over and over again. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
It is much easier to avoid a confrontation or avoid one of these situations than it is to bring your loved one back down when they're already in the middle of a catastrophic reaction. So we want to avoid these confrontations in the first place. This is not an action by your loved one, but it's a reaction to their situation. You need to use the right approach and be a detective and look into what went wrong and why. Because people with dementia often cannot verbalize what they feel and need.
And this goes back to we were talking about the unmet needs, right? They just don't know how to communicate with us about that potentially. So they get frustrated and it may result in an overreaction to something. So let's go back to avoid confrontation for a minute. I just want to chat about that. So maybe some ways to actually nip it in the bud to avoid some confrontational situations is to be one step ahead of the game. So if you see something starting to escalate or starting to brew, maybe step in and do that detective work that Ryan was talking about and start to de-escalate the situation, right? So let's go back to that hairbrush situation for a second. Had I been in the bathroom and I could see my mom getting frustrated because I had everything laid out for her, I had her hairbrush, her makeup case, and all this other, her skincare laid out in order, but she was so upside down with everything that she couldn't make sense of it. Now, if I had been there and been paying attention, sometimes we can't, or I had been listening to what was going on, I could have stepped in and saw that and maybe said, hey, in a calming voice, what can I help you with? What is upsetting you? And then she probably would have said her hairbrush and we would have gotten into a situation where we might have been able to resolve this. So being one step ahead, listening, hearing, watching, and kind of being very observant of what's going on will help you avoid confrontation.
Certainly.
So now we've got an angry person. What are the don'ts?
So don't escalate the situation. If you start yelling or you start pushing back, that's going to validate their perceived threat and let them know that, okay, yeah, it's game time.
Right.
This person is an enemy right now.
Right.
So
that leads right into don't push back.
Don't push back. Physically, verbally, anything. Let the person work through what they're going through and be calm and supportive. Do not try to restrain your loved one. There are very few situations where restraints are okay, and those need to be left to psychiatric practitioners. And don't lose your cool. If you lose your cool too, then there's no coming back on this.
So what are the do's when you have an angry person in front of you? Well, keep calm and breathe. Like Ryan just said, don't lose your cool. Keep calm and breathe. And sometimes just a few deep breaths can trigger the parasympathetic nervous system and let us start to calm down, right? And I know that, we get worked up when there's catastrophic, we get worked up, we can feel it, we're like, deep breaths, keep calm.
And you can also often have your loved one do some deep breathing
with
as well.
you. Exactly.
I've used that countless times with residents. We both come down together.
Exactly. The next thing, if it's safe to do so, walk away for a few minutes and take a reset. Again, that's a great opportunity to breathe if you need to be by yourself. Only if it's safe to do so. Take a time out, get your body language in a better space, come back with calm, happy, resolve attitude, and then work through this. And again, keeping in mind that your loved one is going to mirror your approach and your reactions and your body language and your emotion. There you go. Use positive body language. And then we want to be gentle, but we don't want to infantilize them. We definitely don't want to treat them like a child. They are adults, and we need to respect that.
Now, if you notice that you're having these catastrophic reactions or any other challenging behavior with any sort of frequency, it can be really helpful to document what led up to them. So this sheet has, a place where you can put the date, the time, what the behavior was, what led up to it, what did you try to do to resolve it, and then what happened. And as you get a little bit more data in here, you can start noticing patterns, if it's a certain time of day, or if it's, around 3 o'clock and maybe their lunch is wearing off and they're getting a little bit hungry and maybe a snack can head it off. There's a lot of different things you can do once you have the data to intervene before it gets catastrophic.
Right. And this is a great tool for that being a detective. It's a great look back, just as Ryan said. So, that being said, let's be a detective and let's take that story that we talked about with the hairbrush and kind of dissect it. So, what was the incident? The hairbrush. The stealing of the hairbrush, right? Who was involved? Me. I was involved. When did this occur? It occurred in the evening after we had traveled 16 hours, as I said, and it occurred in another city. So that would be the where. So in another foreign city, in a hotel room that she was unfamiliar with, in a bathroom she was unfamiliar with. And why did this happen? We already said it. Exhaustion. Upside down with time zones. Been traveling forever. In a different environment. A whole new hotel. A whole nother bed. A whole nother, host of things for her to have a catastrophic reaction. And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't the only one that night, but that was the biggest one. We had a smaller one too, but this was the biggest one. So what did I do to change this situation with her? First of all, handle the situation. That's what we want to do. And what do we need to do? We need to take the blame, right? So I took the blame. I said, when she's having her frantic episode, I said, "Oh gosh, Mom, I am so sorry. I did take your brush by mistake. I apologize. And I know exactly where it is." And I had moved the brush to the table, even though it was in the bathroom, as I said earlier, right in front of her. I went and got it, and I put it on the table in our little living room area, and I went and got her, took her by the hand, and I said, "Here, I found it. Here's your hairbrush. And again, I am so sorry that I took your hairbrush. It won't happen again." Simple. Calmed her down. Calmed her down immediately. So that's the number one thing. Take the blame. And some simple things that you can say for apologies. Like, "I'm sorry. I did not mean to," whatever. "I'm sorry I made you feel X. I'm sorry. I know this is hard." And that was another thing I did say to her. I was like, "I'm sorry. I know it's frustrating when you can't brush your hair." And then, that launched into a whole thing like, "Yeah, it is frustrating when I can't brush my hair. And just, we were getting ready for dinner and I couldn't get my hair." And, the drill with all this. So, and my approach was very calm, even though in my head I was like, my mom's escaping and she's yelling at me and I'm a horrible daughter and all this other stuff. That's when you gotta dig deep and you gotta be like, "Whew, all right, here we go." And jump in and handle the situation. And we have to remember, they are always right? We say that all the time through this course. Ryan has said that he's never seen anyone win an argument with a dementia loved one. And I'll tell you, I certainly didn't. Nope, never, ever. And we are living in their reality, and we need to step into that, right? And honestly, it can be kind of fun. I kind of have a good time sometimes stepping into my mom's reality. I learned a lot about her in her younger days and younger years. And it was great. I listened to cool music from the 60s and all this kind of fun stuff. We dressed up as flight attendants one day. It was great. Like fun, like I said, sometimes you've got to be an actor. So as soon as we start pushing back on this, that's when we're going to be in trouble. Right? So they're always right. Handle the situation, be calm, have a good approach, and then you're going to set yourself up for success with these catastrophic reactions. So I think that's it for catastrophic. That sums it up. And next we're going to move into other common behaviors, things like wandering, hoarding, shadowing, and things like that. So we will see you in the next lesson.